Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder. Welcome to today's main question at hand, which is which shell should I use? I get asked this a lot. What are you using and why are you using it? For me, the answer is almost always with top tier tanks Heat FS, which probably makes people think Heat FS is the best shell in the game. It's not quite like that. Heat FS has a couple of features. First of all, high amounts of penetration. Second of all, it can go through pretty much any tank in the game, but it comes at a cost. And the cost is you can't shoot through solid objects such as fences or buildings, you have no post-pen effect, and in a lot of cases you're throwing away money because Heat FS costs quite a bit to use. So to adjust this, I think the best question to ask would be, instead of why you're using the shell or what's the best shell in the game, is to understand that every shell is good depending on what you're using it in, what you're using it against, and how you're playing the game, because your playstyle will determine what shells you're using. For a defensive player, somebody who likes to stay not so much at the back of the map, but towards the back of his team, you don't really need high amounts of penetration. What you need is a steady aim and go for the weak spots. You can flank around. You can use anything. That kill I just got on the M41, that kill could have been gotten with any shell in the game, because we're talking about a light tank that has no armor and has a very packed crew. If that was a mouse, then we would have quickly started thinking about what are we going to use that has higher amounts of penetration. For me, Heat FS is usable because of how I play the game. I play it very aggressively. I try to be the first person to the capture point. I try to be the first person to be taken out and be the first person to respawn a plane, because that's kind of the point of where you get some of the advantages from. If that obviously fails, you've got the SPA as a backup, or perhaps another tank, an ATGM and whatnot. Obviously, this will boil down to how good you are with, creating and keeping spawn points. But the main issue with choosing shells is it changes how you're going to use them. If you're using Hesh, you'll have to think where that Hesh shell is going to do maximum damage. If you're using APHE, your thought process is probably where can I pen, and then I'll leave the damage to the shell, because APHE is a shell used probably 90% of the time in tier 2 and tier 3 matches. When you're playing a Tiger, your main thought process is where can I pen, where is the weak spot. But when you're playing in top tier, especially with Heat FS, the thought process isn't where's the weak spot, but where are the internal modules. The game thought process completely switches. And so, whilst Heat FS does have the best penetration, and for a lot of people I think it looks like it's a no-brainer, you just point at the enemy tank and shoot, if you don't do your background check of where you can shoot, what will often enough happen is you're going to take out the engine, or you're going to take out the loader, you're going to set them on fire, but you're not going to take out the gunner. And in top tier tanks, he is going to be using a very powerful shell as well. It might not be Heat FS, it doesn't need to be. You're in a T62, he can throw Hesh at you and blow up your ammo rack. He can use APDS to reliably still go through you. Here's a very interesting factor. I'm fighting a Conqueror. Now, a Conqueror is a 7.3 tank, and it looks like it's a beast of a machine. But this is a top tier. And you would expect that using what most people deem as the best shell in the game towards the back of a tank would result in an instant death, and doesn't. The Conqueror has a feature that is not available on any stat card, it's not available online, there's no guide on it. This is called survivability. Survivability is a tank's ability to not die when it's being shot at. And this works very well on low tiers, for example, heavy tanks, tank destroyers. Germans have a couple of really great examples here, the Maus, the Yak Panther, Yak Tiger. Tanks that you need to shoot at a lot of times to be able to kill the crew members. And so, even though a Yak Tiger versus an M46 with Heat FS looks like maybe an unfair match, because suddenly the Yak Tiger's armor is redundant, it's not the armor that counts, it's what's behind it. And so, even a well-played M46 will take about 2 shells to be able to fully take out an Yak Tiger. And so, Heat FS is effective when you're shooting from the front, when you've got a lot of armor to contend with, and when you don't really have to think where to shoot. As soon as Heat FS is used from behind or the sides of the enemy tank, it becomes a hell of a shell to use. This is where, when you're flanking enemies, I would kill to use APHE every time. And so in the Heat FS round, trying to engage players from a side-on perspective is often enough putting yourself at a disadvantage, because it will take at least 2 or more shells to reliably take them out. And this gives a massive advantage to anyone playing a heavy tank in pretty much any nation, that if they're being shot at by Heat FS, their survivability is technically increased if they're being flanked. Obviously, in a head-on engagement, that heavy tank is at a big mess. But you shouldn't be in that position in the first place. If you're a heavy tank or a tank destroyer like a Yak Tiger, and you're being shot from the front by Heat FS, you should have been able to eliminate that person in the first place because you see him. The idea of a Yak Tiger or a Mouse or any tank that has big bulky armor is that anything that comes in front of you has to die. If it's not dead yet, you've either been out reloaded or you just simply haven't done your job well. If you get flanked, that's a different story. But you will get flanked because that's the main way they're going to be taking you out. And if you do get flanked, Heat FS will be a disadvantage, not an advantage. So if you get killed by Heat FS, what you need to know is that players using Heat FS are aiming for your internal modules, not your armor. So angling your armor isn't doing you any favor. Angling the internals is. I know this is going to sound funny, but if you're being attacked by somebody with Heat FS, turning to your sides or your rear can actually increase the amount of chance for you to maybe not get out alive, but at least take a couple of shots with you. And in my personal opinion, is this sole survivability that happened because of Heat FS penetration but no post-pen effect that leaves this gap of kind of desirability between what is APHE and Heat FS. Because Heat FS does everything that APHE doesn't, and it also works vice versa. These two shells are almost complementary, and if I had the option of using APHE, I would use it on every single tank in conjunction with Heat FS, because anything you have side on, APHE will do more work. Head on, you got armor to deal with, go for Heat FS, but again, shoot for the internals, not the externals. And as a very big basic tip for anyone playing, let's say, the King Tiger against the current M46 with Heat FS, or whether you're playing the Mouse against the T62, the rule of thumb is kill them before they kill you. And it only takes one well-placed APHE shell to take out a tank, whilst it will take at least 2 Heat FS shells to take out yours. So keep that in mind, because your survivability is always higher in an APHE tank than it is with Heat FS.